Let's try it. Literally happens. We have a fried. It's honey drenched. Oh, you're pumping. I know you're talking about.
Assalamu alaikum, mu'mineen. If we can all settle down, inshallah, we're going to be starting the program. We're going to start with some Quran, inshallah. Can I get one loud salawat? Alright, so now first I want to request Noor to come say Quran for us. Loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I'm going to be reading Surah Al-Rahman, which is on page 531, if you'd like to follow أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام وحب العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجن من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشأة في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكم شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذواتا أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجانا الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإنهن الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدحامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الأخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفراف خضر وعبقار حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام صدق الله.
محمد وآله. جزاك الله بيتا جزاك الله.
اللهم صل على محمد.
I know we're a little bit behind in schedule, but inshallah we will have a zikr and then go on with the kids recitation, and we're going to have poetry by adults. And also, I know we don't have many people, but we're pleased and honored to have Maulana Mehdi Hazari to come and speak for us today. He came all the way from Mali today, and to recite lecture for us. But with a loud salawat, I want to request everyone to move forward, because so we can at least get everyone close up together, you know. So a loud salawat for everybody. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Try to keep the old people in the back. Young
Okay.
people is coming.
Well, if that's the case, I gotta
I'm
put it in there.
So,
That's salawat. Allahumma salli ala
now I want to ask Usama to please come recite the Hadith Qissa for us. Loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Another salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Mubarak everybody for Wiladat of Imam Muhammad Baqir and Imam Al-Hadi. Thank you for all of you for coming, and also for Maulana and Hazari again. Thank you for coming to celebrate this occasion with us. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So inshallah, we will, as Mehdi said, alhamdulillah, we started with the Quran, we're going to recite Hadith al-Kisa. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت وعليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. وأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فما كانت إلا ساعة إلا وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء. فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني ويا ثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين عليه السلام نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا من اختاره الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء. فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل عليه نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء. قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي ويا خليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا ابنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إنا هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبتي هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. وهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا تسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم. وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ وقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل على محمد وآل
now we're gonna start with the kids program. Yeah, of course, I just started. So, I guess let's get, brother over here, loud salawat. You want to over there? Yeah, you sit over there.
تبت يدا ذي ذهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا.
جزاك الله.
ما شاء الله. Very good job. Good job. You gonna say one too? Yeah.
سلام صلوات. صل على صلوات. صل على محمد وآل محمد.
تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة حطب في جيدها حبل من مسد.
So, let's go ahead and start the adult program. We're running behind a good schedule. So, I want to ask, Brother Raza to please come recite something for us. And it'll be
Close to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Long time no see. That's why.
Y'all have some poems in Persian for the Milad of Imam Muhammad Prophet and some
جزاك الله.
for Ali al-Hadi.
جزاك الله.
I hope you understand.
We will.
We do. We have a lot of Iranians here.
I'll translate. Alhamdulillah.
لو صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ای که مشغول خدایم کرده ای آگهم من تو دعایم کرده ای یا ابا جعفر منو بیمار کن بنده آن بیماریم بیدار کن تا که از مدح و ثنایت دم زنم این سکوت محض را برهم زنم باغ علم خدایی سیدی نور مهد کبریایی سیدی ای طلوع تو غروب عربدی جلوه نور محمدی
سبحان الله. سبحان الله.
این مدینه دلپذیر از بوی تو شد مسلمان چون که دیده روی تو خوش ببار الطاف ایزد یا ابا جعفر محمد یا ابا جعفر مدد ای شرور قلب احمد یا ابا جعفر مدد میوه باغ محمد یا ابا جعفر مدد میرساند مردمت بوی علی را بر مشام میچکاند حق به دستش شیعه را شرب مدام ای صحابه خوشخبر از ماه رحمت باغ را میوه فتح و ظفر از باغ اسمت باغ را روز میلاد سراپا روی نصرت میدهد طلعت ماه رجب نور از دو حضرت میدهد شیرین شده باز کام دلهامون بارونی شده دیده بارون دنیا اومده نوه ارباب نورانی شده همه دنیامون امشب دربار رحمت حق به روی دنیا وا شده امشب حضرت امام زین العابدین بابا شده یبن الزهرا یا امام باقر. شده بیت ولایت همچو خد برین، زد قدم در جهان باقر علم دین. جلوگر شد ماه دل آرایی، شهر مدینه شد تماشایی. مژده ای اهل بلا آمد فرزند فاطمه، در جهان پیدا شده مهد فرزند فاطمه. بر اهل بلا عید معید شد امشب، در جلوه لطف داد سرمد شده امشب. لبخند عیان بر لب احمد شد امشب، میلاد همایون محمد شده امشب. ساغر زدم ز جام باقر، بشکفته لبم به نام باقر. چشمم همه روشن از جمالش، آمد به جهان امام باقر. میلاد شکافندهی دانش نبوی، وارث علم علوی خجسته باد. And this was about the امام علی نبی طالب. ای نگاهت در مسیر کهکشان ها ماندگار، وسعت دستان تو بر سایبان ها ماندگار. می شود ثابت به من در هر فراز جامعه، نام تو بین همه خط امامان ماندگار. ما گدای سامراد از سفره ها از لطف تو، پهن خواهد شد در آنها آب و نانها ماندگار. شک ندارم از کرم آباد چشمانت هنوز، باغ آباد است و شوق باغها ماندگار. سائل آمد پشت در وقت سحر هین غروب، سائل آمد پشت در وقت سحر هین غروب. این چنین پای حرم شد آستانها ماندگار. رفت با دستان تو پر بی آنکه بشناسد تو را، رفت با دستان تو پر بی آنکه بشناسد تو را. می شوند این گونه بینام و نشانها ماندگار. ده چراغ عرش روشن آنت هادی الامم، آیه هایت هست در شمس و دخانها ماندگار. سامرا با عشق تو آباد شد خواهد شد، ولی حرف تو این است باشد جمع کرانها ماندگار. کی به نظر باده نابم کش کنی، رحم بر این حالم حال خرابم کنی. گر که دلت نیست به من پس چرا، جلوه به بیداری و خوابم کنی. با نظرت خواب شود کیمیا، می شود آیا که خوابم کنی خطابم کنی. ذوب شدن در تو حیات من است، می شود آیا که مذابم کنی. روشنی چشم تو امام جواد، نور تو چشم همدان آمده. خیزش آمده که عرش چراغان شده است، خنده مهمان لبان حضرت باران شده است. گل لبخند که آمد به لب مادرتان، همه عرش خدا شاد و غزالخوان شده است. شمیم عطر رحمت میوزد از کوچه امشب، دوباره دیده شد در آینه وجه خدا امشب. میان گهواره‌ای که ملک خدا، میان گهواره‌ای که ملک گهواره جنبان است، به جلوه آمده روی علی مرتضی امشب. بخوان چندین فراز از جامعه در نیمه شب امشب، که حال دیگری دارد مناجات و دعا امشب. چرا باید به دارو و نسخه دل بندم، چرا که نام هادی می شود درد و دوا امشب. چرا که نام هادی می شود درد و دوا امشب. ز یمن مقدم مولود زهرا حضرت هادی، شده آینه بندان خانه ابن الرضا امشب. شبیه گنج ایوان طلا در گنج این حجره، نشستن پای گهواره عجب دل صفایی دارد امشب. دخیل دامن این نازدانه شهر پیغمبر، نمایان شد که فرقی نیست در شاه و گرا امشب. نه اینکه در مدینه کوچه های شهر روشن شد، چراغان می شود از نور ارض و سما امشب. شب میلاد ساقی پر کند جام مرا از می، چه شوری در زمین و آسمان گشته به پا امشب. شده است بر این شهر پیغمبر لبیک میدانم خبرهایی است در هر جای سامرا امشب دم باغ و جواد آنگونه خیلی زایان دیدم که گفتم هست این میخوان هم دار و شفا امشب.
جزاک الله جزاک الله ماشاءالله لا ما جزاك الله خير اللهم صل على
Now I want to request Brother On to please come recite.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وعلیکم السلام.
سب سے پہلے آپ سب کو امام محمد باقر امام محمد علیہ السلام کی ولادت مبارک
جزاک اللہ جزاک اللہ.
منقبل ہے امام باقر علیہ السلام کی
شاد.
علوم آل محمد کا آسمان باقر.
سبحان اللہ سبحان اللہ.
علوم آل محمد کا آسمان باقر. علوم آل محمد کا آسمان باقر. رموز کون مکہ کا ہے رازدار باقر. علی کا روپ ہے یہ منبر سلونی پر. علی کا روپ ہے یہ منبر سلونی پر. دیار جیل میں ہے علم کی عذاب باقر.
نعرہ صلوات.
پہنچ نہ پائیں گے افکار اس کے ساحل تک. پہنچ نہ پائیں گے افکار اس کے ساحل تک. فضیلتوں کا ہے ایک بے قرار باقر. بکھرتے جاتے ہیں شہروں میں نور کے جلوے. بکھرتے جاتے ہیں شہروں میں نور کے جلوے. ہے آسماں تخیل کی کہکشاں باقر. علوم آل محمد کا آسمان باقر. اسی کے ذکر میں مصروف ثاقب و بوذر. اسی کے ذکر میں مصروف ثاقب و بوذر. صدا و فکر کے پردوں میں بھی نہا باقر. علوم آل محمد کا آسمان باقر. اور محمد آل محمد
Now, before I call Maulana Mehdi Hazari, on behalf of the community, we would like to thank you for coming from all the way from Milad to come recite lecture for us. It's, like I said, it's an honor, and we're really blessed to have you here. And we're hoping that, inshallah, you keep coming to come see us all the time. Let's all recite Surah Fatiha for all Muhrimin and Muhrimat, especially the family of Maulana Hazari. So, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Now, with about salawat, I want to call Maulana Hazari to come recite lecture.
بعدين ايوه नहीं I will keep don't worry
نعرہ صلوات اللهم صل على محمد نعرہ حیدری صل على محمد
Believe me, no one needs to hear me that well. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. صلوات على محمد. Let's have another Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. وقل ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل القرآن الكريم والفرقان الحكيم على النبي الحليم الذي هو على خلق عظيم وجعله الدليل على خير سبيل وكتابا فيه تفصيل وبيان وتحصيل ظاهره أنيق وباطنه عميق لا تحصى عجائبه ولا تبلى غرائبه. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على من أرسل حجة للعالمين وكان نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيعنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا المصطفى الأمجد والرسول المسدد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الغرر الميامين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه المبين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تجعل يدك مغلولة إلى عنقك ولا تبسطها كل البسط فتقعد ملوما محسورا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to thank all of you, Dr. Hussam and my brother Hassan, for inviting me. It is my honor. I am always happy to be here. I am so proud of this community, of everything that you have done. And it is always small steps that you have to take, despite the fact that you face criticism, despite the fact that it's not always easy. But if your intention is sincere and your goal is the satisfaction of Allah, then eventually Allah opens the door like this. Although I want to begin today by saying that, especially given what's been happening in our country for the last few days, that we need more compassion. Human beings, it's a strange circumstance in which we live. And although insan today is what insan was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years, and we will remain, insan will remain the same insan, no difference. It's just that societies change, technology changes, connectivity changes, but insan is still driven by the same things. And yet you see the legacy of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam is that you must maintain compassion. You must be compassionate. And you must strive not to ever reach a place where your heart has become so hard that you stop from seeing the other human being as a human being. We have a habit of dehumanizing somebody who we don't agree with, someone we cannot understand, someone whose factors and life and circumstances are different from ours. And when we dehumanize them, it becomes much easier to take their rights or to stomp on them. And that's why you need compassion. And the religion of Allah is the religion of compassion, because it teaches you that in the end, you are all subject to His law and to living by what He teaches and what He has obligated upon you. And if you don't, you yourself will be answerable. Forget about anybody else. Salawat ala Muhammad. So having said that, let me say that I will speak a little generally tonight and hopefully talk about our two beloved Imams, Al-Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, and Al-Imam Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi alayhi salam. They say that in the time of Al-Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, who was the quote-unquote Khalifa of that time, that when he had called Al-Imam al-Hadi, I say called, he compelled him to come up towards Samarra. When he compelled him to come to Samarra, he had many instances in which he will call him to the court and even tell the people in the court that, look, this is the great-great-great-grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima al-Zahra. He has a high status in the eyes of the Shia. Don't show him any respect. So he will tell the courtiers, in fact, just remain seated. When he walks in, don't stand up. And he was young. Imam was young at that time anyways, but they recognized the position of Imamat. And even then, they could not deny the honor that was in the Imam. So what he tried to do instead is he will call people who will challenge the Imam's knowledge. Even so much so that they will try to change the way Imam would think. Imam was very young when he became the Imam. He was 8 years old approximately. When Imam Jawad died, Imam Hadi was very young. So when he became the Imam, Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, he tried to get teachers who will change the thinking of this young boy. And he will send these teachers to influence Al-Imam al-Hadi, change the way he thinks, change his upbringing, so that he moves away from the path of the Ahl al-Bayt. And when they called the teachers after some months, after some weeks had gone by, and they said, what happened? Have you not taught that slave boy, basically trying to lower the status of Al-Imam al-Hadi? They said, don't call him a boy. Don't call him just an ordinary. He is a sheikh himself. He is a scholar. And he is such a scholar that he taught me things I didn't know. So you see that when they would bring him into the court of Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, they will question the Imam. So on one occasion, Mutawakkil calls a man named Ibn Sikkit. Ibn Sikkit was a scholar at that time. He calls him, he says, look, ask him some questions that will stump him, that will be difficult for him to answer. So there were many questions that were asked. There was even a man named Yahya ibn Aktham who will come and ask Imam al-Hadi different questions, which there's lots of stories about this, lots of riwayat. So Ibn Sikkit, he comes and he says, Yabna Rasulullah. He asks Imam al-Hadi. He says, in the time of Musa alayhi salam, why did Allah send Musa alayhi salam with the staff, the stick that will become into a serpent? Why did he send him with the miracle that if he puts his hand in his pocket and takes it out, it becomes white? Why did he give him all these different types of miracles? Whereas in the time of Isa alayhi salam, he gave Isa alayhi salam the miracle, or permitted him to raise the dead, to cure the sick, to take the blind and give the blind sight. And then why, after Isa alayhi salam, did he give Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam the miracle? The miracle of the Holy Quran, and give him the sword. So now they ask this, the court is gathered to see what is the answer. Al-Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, he answers, he says, as for Musa alayhi salam, in his time, magic was something that was being practiced. And what these magicians were doing was they were trying to use the sleight of hand and illusion to make the people think that there was some magic. And so it was important in the eyes of the people that magic was something that was supernatural. And to be able to convince those people of something, you had to use magic or prove that to them that magic was happening. So if a person wanted influence, who wanted someone to follow them, they will use magic and the people will follow. So Musa came and by the permission of Allah performed these miracles. In the time of Isa alayhi salam, people were interested in medicine. Medicine was spreading, treating people, diseases, etc., was the way by which people had influence. People were recognized as having knowledge. And so to convince someone, you had to show the ability to do medicine. And so Isa alayhi salam, by Allah's permission, was able to cure the leper, was take the dead and raise the dead. Someone who is blind was given sight, etc. Same thing. So Ibn Sakit, he says, what about Rasulullah's time? Al-Imam al-Hadi, he says, as for my grandfather's time, he says, in those days, the Arabs of the peninsula were interested in poetry, in writing, in being able to speak beautifully, right? Beautiful language. So Allah gave them the Quran, such that the miracle of this holy Quran was that they could not, even though he challenged them that bring even one ayah like it. And they could not come with anything similar to the holy Quran. That was the miracle and the beauty of that Quran, such that it became a proof that if you want to know where is the truth, here is the miracle right in front of you. So they said, what about the sword? Ibn Sikit, he says he came with the sword. What about the sword? Imam al-Hadi, he says in those days, not only was it known that poetry and good Arabic language and being able to write was something that was lauded and looked upon as great qualities, but people were known to be warriors, right? Prowess with the sword and in the battlefield was something that was known. So he says he gave Rasulullah the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He gave him the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib, so that there was no ever doubt or confusion or contradiction or counterpoint that where is the proof of the truth. All of this is for the truth, right? But where can you find the truth? Whether it was the staff of Musa alayhi salam, whether it's Isa alayhi salam curing the leper, or the Holy Quran, which is the living miracle that is still with us today, what was the reason? It's because you want to convince the person of the truth. And not only convince them, but do so in such a manner that there is no objection afterwards as to what is the truth, right? That is the power of the truth. So Ibn Sakit, he looks at Al-Imam al-Hadi and he says, so what about now? What about now? Al-Imam al-Hadi, he says, al-aql, your mind, your reasoning. He says, your reasoning is what is supposed to point to you where is Allah and the truth of Allah, such that if you deny it, Allah will deny you. Yeah. And you will be known to be wrong. So you see, so why am I telling you this? The aql. Because everything the Ahl al-Bayt teaches us is about knowledge, right? It is about knowledge. In the end, it's about knowledge. And that's why Rasulullah, he says, Ana madinatul ilm wa aliyun babuha. I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its door. You want knowledge, you have to come through the door, but in the end, it is knowledge that you need. Why do you need that knowledge? And I will stay with this aspect of it. You need knowledge because in life, you are trying to achieve a few things, okay? One of those things is you want to be aware. Knowledge is not just about how much you memorize. I can memorize many, many things, but if I'm not aware, what does it mean, right? Let me give you an example, okay? I have knowledge in my mind that alcohol, consumption of it is haram, okay? Consumption of alcohol is haram, is not allowed, is not permissible. But I'm not aware that in 50% of the foods that I am eating, there is alcohol. Okay. Or how many of you like fish and chips? Only Mehdi? Only here? Yes. In the back, fish and chips? Yeah. What type of fish and chips? Yes. Very good. What type of fish and chips? The one your school used to serve? Ah, I'm coming. You're jumped ahead. Brother Majid, you're smart. You jumped ahead. What about beer? Yeah, homemade. Of course, everything homemade is better. Beer battered. Yeah, beer battered. Who likes beer battered fish and chips? Who's tried it? Come on, you can raise your hand. I won't judge. No judgment. No judgment. So I received this question that beer battered chips, no? It's good. I said, what are you talking about? They said they put beer in the batter. They fry it. Once they fry it, the alcohol evaporates, right? Once you put it in the oil, it's so hot, 200 degrees, all the alcohol evaporates. Halal, you can eat it. Can you eat it? Why not? Okay, so, well, be careful. Vanilla extract, you got to be careful a little bit. We'll come back. We can come back to that. What happens to it? I heard someone says it. Hajanadia, she says it. It's najis. It's najis. Doesn't matter if the alcohol came out of it, didn't come out of it, is left there, not left there. It's najis. Once it touches that alcohol, the beer itself, it becomes najis. Not the alcohol, but the beer. It becomes najis. Okay? Same thing if you put wine. The alcohol may evaporate, but the wine itself is najis. Okay? So I may know a lot of things. I may have knowledge, but if I'm not aware of the world around me, what good is that knowledge? Right? You have to have awareness. Okay? So Islam is teaching you that knowledge is about a few things. One is awareness. That if you have knowledge, then you have to be aware of how to apply that knowledge. Okay? Not only that, but you have to be able to see that when you apply that knowledge, are you doing it correctly? Okay? So you have to be able to implement that knowledge properly and understand what are the consequences of that implementation. Right? Not only that, but once you've implemented the knowledge, what is the consequence of it? Okay? Meaning something is going to happen in return. And if something happens in return, how will you react to it in life? That is knowledge. Knowledge is about not only being aware of circumstances, how to implement those circumstances, doing it properly, but then also reacting to the consequence of whatever it is you have done to begin with. Where do we make mistakes? Along one of these steps. Either we're not aware properly, we don't know what's happening around us, or we are aware, but we don't know how to implement properly, right? We don't know the law. We know the law, but we don't know how to implement the law. Or we implement, we don't implement properly. We do the wrong thing. Or we do it and the consequence comes back and we don't know how to react. It's one of these four things. There's nothing else. It's one of these four things that is going to get us. And you see that from the beginning of Rasulullah's message, it was about this. It is about these four things. When it comes to your deen, it is these four things. It is nothing else. It is these four things. And these four things, they basically, when Islam came up to now, are centered around Quran. How aware are you of the Quran? You know what it's telling you. Can you implement it properly? Can you use it properly? Hadith, meaning what the Ahl al-Bayt does. And number three, the status of that Ahl al-Bayt and that Quran in your life. That's what it is coming about. And you see that when Rasulullah left this world, all of the struggle was about what? When Imam Ali alayhi salam becomes the Khalifa, when the people come to him and make him Khalifa. I'm not talking, he's Khalifa from the beginning. From the minute Rasul leaves this world, he has become Khalifatullah. No question. When the people make him Khalifa, what does he face? He goes out to the Battle of Siffin, and the enemy comes. They are defeating his army. Imam Ali's army is defeating the enemy. The enemy comes, they put the Quran up on the spears, and now suddenly a contingent of Imam's army comes and they say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we cannot fight. He says, why? He says, they put the Quran on the spear. He says, that is not the Quran. Those are pages they have lofted up onto the top of the spear. Those are pages of a book that has been placed there. Quran is what you live by. He says, keep fighting. They say, no, we will not fight. He says, if you force us to fight, we will revolt. At that point, what happened? It split. Everything split in that moment. Split into what? Muslims were in the middle. You have a middle group of Muslims. You have one group that's on this end and one group on this end. No? Let me describe to you. Most Muslims want to practice their Islam. They want to try to be as good as possible. Read the Quran, do their salat, do all the ibadat, everything they possibly can. One group who they don't care what the Quran says, they're going to twist it as much as possible. Right? That's Banu Umayyah. Banu Umayyah, they will take the Quran, they will twist it. They will use it however they want to use it. Abu Sufyan from the beginning, you think he became Muslim because he wanted to be Muslim? Because he believed in Allah, No. It was political expediency that made him a Muslim. Because he saw the world was going towards Islam. He thought, if I have to maintain my position, I have to become Muslim. When I become the leader, or my son becomes the leader, or my grandson becomes the leader, they will take the Quran, they will twist the Quran and use it however they want. That's one end. The other end are those who will take the Quran, take what they have, and they will apply it so strictly, so stringently, so extremely, that it will not be Islam in any way, shape, or form. What did the Khawarij do? The Khawarij, who were formed from the Battle of Siffin, they said, no. And they went so extreme, they said, anyone who breaks the rule of Allah in any way, shape, or form, what has happened to them? They're no longer Muslim, they're kafir. They're labeled as a kafir. We see that today, don't we? To some degree. Thank God we don't hear of them so much these days. But they are there, these people. Two extremes. One that will corrupt the message of Islam. One that will take it and apply it so strictly, so dogmatically, and wrongly, falsely, that they will be so extreme on one end. And what is Islam saying? Islam says to go either way? Too extreme on this side, too extreme on this side? No. It is saying, learn with moderation. The verse of the Holy Quran that I recited for you, what does it say? And it describes about generosity. It describes about charity, about giving. But this applies to our life in totality. It says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ. Don't take your hand and clutch on your own neck like this, such that you don't give anything. Meaning you become so selfish, so miserly, you don't give anything. وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ فَتَقْعُدْ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا. He says, don't also go and give everything away. So that then you'll be poor and you'll be sitting there saying, oh God, I gave everything away. Allah says, no, don't be miserly. Don't be so generous that you go and give everything away. Be in the middle. Be moderate. In the middle path. Always. Always be in the middle path. This goes for everything in life. Religion is not extremism. Religion is also not absolutely loose that you just do whatever you want to do. It is the middle path. And when I say middle path, I mean understanding what the religion is saying to apply it properly in your life. When you see the legacy of Ahl al-Bayt, this is what they are establishing. Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam. When he set up his school in Medina, which eventually Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is the one who's going to be the teacher of, and thousands of students are there. What are they teaching? They are teaching religion, the application of religion, the truth of religion, not only in the interpretation of the Holy Quran, which was being interpreted very loosely. Even today, people will interpret the Quran thinking that they have the right to interpret. When our interpretation is meant for Ahl al-Bayt, it is not meant for us. Or hadith, taking hadith that are not correct, that are false, and going with those false hadith as much as they want, isn't it? And acting on the religion based on their own thinking. So Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, it is reported that he has said, al-kamal kull al-kamal at-tafaqquh fi ad-din. He says, kamal, when you say kamal, it means absolute completion. He says, the most perfect of completion is at-tafaqquh fi ad-din, deep understanding of your religion. But it doesn't stop there. He says, وَالصَّبْرْ عَلَى النَّائِبَةِ وَتَقْدِيرَ الْمَعِيشَةِ. Three things he says. This is deep understanding of your religion. He says, patience during difficulty. Patience during difficulty. And taqdeer al-ma'isha, meaning knowing how to do what with what Allah has given to you. Three simple things. Think about it. This covers every aspect of your life. Your religion, your worship, your relationship with Allah, what you have to do. Patience during difficulty, because when challenges come, what happens? Religion goes out of the door, right? It becomes very difficult to practice your religion when things are very difficult. And then Allah says, know how to implement. Taqdeerul ma'isha. Know how to implement it. There are those who are extreme on one end, and there are those who are extreme on the other. One who implements loosely, completely, the others who take it and apply it to the other end of strictness and difficulty. And do you know, I don't know how many of you know this. Let me ask this question, okay? You'll say this is a strange question, but by now you know me. I ask some strange questions, okay? What is, if you were to look at the countries of Singapore and New Zealand, what would you say is the difference between the two? I'm assuming that you know enough about these two countries.
New Zealand has more natural beauty. Singapore is more of a city-state.
Good. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the social structure of the country. What's the difference between these two? Well, religion, sure, but what else? I'm sorry?
New Zealand has a more family life.
Community, family.
Culture.
Maybe, but you can't say that. Maybe individualism, maybe culture, maybe community. They did a study and they published this in Nature. Okay, so the top biomedical biosciences journal. They studied this. They looked at the toughness versus the looseness of different countries. Okay, tough being strict. Laws are strict. Okay, very strict. It's orderly. It has a lot of order. And countries that are quote unquote looser, they have a little looseness in them. Little looseness in them. So now, in this case, you have. In this case, you have a country of Singapore, where I don't know how many of you have visited Singapore. I have many years ago. There in Singapore, if you spit on the side of the street, you know what happens to you? Not just a fine. I've heard that they lash you. Yeah. It's strict. It is strict, if I'm correct in what I remember. But it is strict. Maybe it's just a fine from spitting. Oh my God. I mean, we walk around spitting all over the place. Muslim countries are particularly notorious where people are spitting on the side of the road, and it's disgusting. But in Singapore, they're so strict. They say if you spit, you get in trouble, massive trouble, right? Whereas in a country like New Zealand, it's more open. I'm not saying that they spit or don't spit, but country like New Zealand, where let's say prostitution is allowed, is open. There are some Scandinavian countries where it's allowed, openly practiced. Whereas in other countries, what happens? They'll catch you, they'll not only fine you, they can put you to death. There are countries like that that are very strict. So what has determined that one is so strict, one is so loose? And they did a study on this. They looked and saw. And they found that one country that's so strict, that's so tight, they have lots of order. There's nizam. There is proper conduct. People behave properly. But it stifles creativity. They don't have creativity. Whereas the other one, there's not as much order in this sense, but that there's lots of creativity because people are free to express themselves however they want. Yes? Now imagine, why am I telling you this? Because you see insan's nature, what it is like. And Allah does not say that you go and become so strict and go so far away from what He's telling you such that you have deviated from religion. Nor do you go and say, well, I've become so loose that I will interpret the way I want to interpret, and the Quran's meaning is up to me to decide. No. Just to say, I will follow where Allah wants me in the moderation of life. And if you follow that code properly, that code will be implemented for you in your life such that you find most peace, most success, and most advancement for yourself. Salawat ala Muhammad. So in this case, why do I tell you all of this? Because in the time of Al-Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam, and through the times of all the Imams, in fact, you will see that there was this tendency of people to either be too loose in their interpretation of religion or too strict. And both were wrong because they had corrupted the actual message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. They say one day a man was waiting for Imam Al-Hadi, and he had a lot of difficulty. He was a Shia, and he had a lot of difficulty in his life, a lot of problem in his life. And he had prayed, and he was a good Shia, good follower, good mu'min. So he's waiting for the Imam to see if he can help him. Imam comes by, says salam to him, and before the companion can say anything, Al-Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam, he asks him, he says, which one of the gifts of Allah, the bounties of Allah, should we be thankful for? Yeah, what a question to ask. Imam is asking him. So the man, he surprised by the question of the Imam, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, I don't know, you tell me. You tell me. Al-Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam, he says three things. He says, Allah made you a mu'min, and by making you a mu'min, He made it prohibited for the fire to burn you. Nar Jahannam will not burn you because you are mu'min. It has saved you. He gave you afiyah. He gave you afiyah. Afiyah means well-being, strength, power, good health, these sorts of things. He gave you afiyah so that you can be obedient to Him. And He gave you qunur. All right? Qunur, in Arabic, when you translate, it means contentedness. You're content. Okay? But you can also think of it as what? Moderation. No? Someone who has qunur is moderate in their behavior. They're not one extreme, denying themselves everything or chasing after everything in the life of this world. They're in the middle. He says He gave you qunur. Why? So you don't go and run and expend your energy in places you don't have to expend your energy. He says work just enough to get what you need for yourself. Imagine. And this is what Al-Imam Al-Hadi was teaching. This man, when he heard this, he immediately closed his mouth. He says, I cannot complain to my Imam about my troubles and my difficulties. In the life of Al-Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam, there were so many of these extreme behaviors. And Al-Imam Al-Hadi, just like Al-Imam Al-Jawad, just like Al-Imam Al-Rida, just like Al-Imam Al-Kadhim, like Al-Sadiq, like Al-Baqir, all of them were trying to teach the Shia, stay on that middle path, the path that Allah has chosen. Don't go this way, don't go that way. One of the questions that came in the time of Al-Mutawakkil Al-Abbasi that he promoted, he wanted this type of discourse. Today, you have all of these crazy discourses that will come. Crazy stories. And we are not immune. My dear brothers and sisters, I will tell you this. Someone sent me this clip of a speaker. He's a dhakir, I think. I don't know who he is, but I got this clip. This dhakir, he is, unfortunately, I say this as somebody who is a Indian Pakistani, that he is from that subcontinent. He is from India, Pakistan. He was sitting and describing the love of Abil Fadl al-Abbas in the Shia. Now, indeed, we love Abil Fadl al-Abbas, yes? We love him so much. So he's telling a story, and he's not saying it is fictitious. He says this is truth. He says there is some village somewhere in maybe Bangladesh, I cannot remember, in Tibet, one of those countries, east of India and Pakistan, where there are some real Shia. And they love Abil Fadl al-Abbas. So much so that they were living in a community where people were not Shia, didn't have love of God, and they were feeling so oppressed. So oppressed. And he's telling this story in front of a Shi'i crowd in the month of Muharram, and he says, so out of their despair of being surrounded by people who are not believers, he says they go into the forest, wherever they're living, outside of the town, the village, and they go there and they kill themselves. out of despair. And when they kill themselves, he says, as they are transitioning to death, as they are going into death, he says, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas comes to them. And he says to them that, no, this is not right. Go back to life. Go back to life. And they come back to life and they go back to their village and they live their lives. Now I ask you, my dear brothers and sisters, is there a reason for us to tell these stories in front of people? What is the good and benefit in telling a story like this? This makes our iman strong. This makes our faith. This gives us knowledge. It teaches us how to navigate life, deal with the problems of life, deal with others who are not believers like us or don't believe what we believe. What is the good in telling a story like this? It is a strange thing. And we are not immune, we Shia think we are immune. We are not immune. We have extremists. And we have people who are so loose in their interpretation of religion. This is not religion. That's why Al-Imam Al-Hadi in his time was dealing with this from inside his own community. I was mentioning to you that Al-Mutawakkil Al-Abbasi, he instituted this, he started this thing where he got some scholars to come and ask the question, is the Quran created or uncreated? Created or uncreated? Now, when you say something is created, you know what I mean. Someone has created it. But when you say it's uncreated, who is the only one who is uncreated? Allah. Allah is uncreated. Everything else is the creation of Allah. So now he said, we're going to have a discourse on this. Mutawakkil says, is the Quran created or is it uncreated? And the people began. The scholars, some are saying, no, it is created. Some are saying, no, it is not created. Others coming with different opinion. They came to Al-Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam. Al-Imam Al-Hadi, he calls the Shia. He says to them, do not be of the people who ask this question and do not be of the people who answer this question. Look, he's very smart. You don't think Imam knows and he can give an answer? In fact, they even report that he says, the only thing you need to say if someone asks you a question about the Quran is that it is the speech of Allah. Don't say anymore. Don't ask if it is created and don't even give an answer as to what you think if it is created or uncreated. Why? Because this very discourse, these types of discourses cause problems. And there is no benefit in this discourse. There's nothing to be gained out of this discourse. Instead, learn. Learn what has to be learned and be a pivot, be a true pivot. I will tell you two more things and I will finish, inshallah. Keep it simple. Knowledge, that knowledge that we are seeking is three things, my dear brothers and sisters, three things. All right? And this is from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That when he was asked, what is ilm? He said, ayatun muhkama, a clear command of God or a clear command that comes to you, that is knowledge. Know that. Allah says, aqimus salat, that is a command. That is knowledge to know that, right? So, ayatun muhkama, the do's and don'ts as commanded by Allah. Sunnatun qa'ima, a way of acting. You have to know how to act. It's not just that the command will come, you have to know how to act, right? I told you, have the awareness and then implementation. Know how to act, sunnatun qa'ima, wa faridatun adila. Third thing. Faridatun adila means have proper ethics, know how to behave. It's not enough that you pray, that you obey God, you do it the right way, but if your akhlaq are poor and you have bad ethics, what does it count? It doesn't count for anything. These three things. These three things. And realize the role that you play in all of this. Realize how important you are in all of this, because you are the one who determines how this comes into form in life. Al-Imam Al-Hadi, alayhi salatu wassalam, salawat ala Muhammad. He would say, khayrun min al-khayri amilahu, wa ajmal min al-jamili qailah. He says, better than the good is the one who does the good. He says, more beautiful than the beautiful thing, more beautiful than the beauty itself is the one who speaks it. وَأَرْجَحُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ حَامِلُهُ. Even more, when you say arjah, it's something that's beneficial. Rajih is something that is beneficial to you. More beneficial than the knowledge is the person who is carrying the knowledge. Ya Allah. The one who carries the knowledge. Meaning not just carry and keeps for themselves, but implements and teaches to other people. And on the other hand, what does he say? He says, شَرٌ مِنَ الشَّرِّ جَالِبُهُ. He says, worse than the evil is the one who brings it about. Worse than the evil itself is the one who brings the evil about. Think about it. Imagine what it is. How Imam is teaching us that be the vehicle of what is right and be in the middle. Be always in the middle. These men, there were some men in the time of Al-Imam Al-Hadi. There was a man named Ibn Bab Al-Qummi. There was a man named Muhammad ibn Nusayr. I don't know if you've heard of the Nusayris. The Nusayris were a group, extremist Shi'i group. Muhammad ibn Nusayr was there as well. And there was a man named Ali ibn Hasaka. There were many others, but these three men in particular in the time of Al-Imam Al-Hadi, they came up with things that were so strange. They will say that Imam Hadi is Allah and that they are the Rasul of Allah. They will say all types of strange things. They will bring up and they will use ayahs of the Quran to make their point. Today, we have the same type of tendency where people are presenting to us things that seem to be right, but are not right. That's why it's very important to go back to those who know. Go back to Al-Imam Al-Hadi. Go back and ask the A'imma Al-Athhar as to what is the truth. Why I say this is because for us today, particularly for our children, if they don't know what is the true message, what are the true boundaries and the limits of that message, then they can very easily come outside of it. Even me today, it's strange how many people will send me things that are not a part of religion, but they will say, oh, isn't this a part of religion? These are grown-ups, adults, people who've been practicing Islam all their life, but misconception has entered in. And yet the legacy of A'imma al-Athhar is to say, no, stay strong on that path. Stay strong on it. And hold on tight to the rope of the Ahl al-Bayt. Hold on tight to the rope of the Ahl al-Bayt. Now I will tell you one story and I will finish, inshallah. This story I like because it gives me hope. And I will tell you the truth, that I imagine myself sitting there viewing this scene, as I will tell you. You will understand when I tell you. In the city of Isfahan, back in the time of Al-Imam Al-Hadi, little after his time, they say most of the people were what are called Nawasib. Nawasib are those who hate the Shia, hate the Ahl al-Bayt. But in that city, there was also one man who was a staunch lover of Ahl al-Bayt, strong Shia. So some people, they came and asked him, they said, how have you become a Shia? Most of the people here are Nawasib. They are haters. They don't like the Ahl al-Bayt. They deny the rights of the Ahl al-Bayt. How did you, out of all of us, suddenly become? He says, I was not always this way. But something happened. I will tell you what happened. He says, many years ago, we were living here, and there was a difficulty that came upon us, many of us. There were many of us. I had some difficulties in my life personally. I had no money. I couldn't have children. My business was suffering. I was struggling. And there were some other people who had some trouble. So we gathered together. They said to me, look, why don't you go to the Khalifa of the time, the Abbasi Khalifa of the time, who was Mutawakkil, and ask him to help. He is the Khalifa. In those days, people thought, oh, the Khalifa is somebody. Meanwhile, he was the worst of the worst in those days. But they didn't know. They said, we will go. We will take our needs. We'll go and ask him to help us. Maybe he will help us. So he says, I took it and I went. We got to Samarra. We waited outside the castle, outside of the court. And we waited. The guard wouldn't let us in. We said, look, we have some questions. We want, please, someone needs to help us. We have come from Isfahan all the way from there to get our questions answered. In those days, that's not an easy journey. So he says, they didn't give us entry. They didn't give us, we never heard. Nothing was ever allowed to us to go inside and speak to Mutawakkil al-Abbasi. We couldn't. Meanwhile, we're sitting there thinking, what should we do? What should I do? He says, I'm thinking to myself, what should I do? Should I go back? What should I do? He's not given us. We've waited and waited and waited. Some say he waited a month even to get an answer from Mutawakkil just to go see him. And it was denied. He says, in the last days, before going back to Isfahan, I heard from the people who were gathered there in the street in front of the court of the Abbasi Khalif that a man named Ali ibn Muhammad is coming. So he says, I didn't know who he was. I asked. I said, who is he? The local guy, he says to me that, oh, don't you know? He says, the Shia, they believe in him as their imam. The Shia believe in him as their imam, as the one who will guide them to the straight path, show them where is the knowledge, show them how to act on the knowledge, show them how to behave. He is this sort of a man. They believe in him. So now he's standing there. He says, I thought to myself, I've come this far. Let's see who this Ali ibn Muhammad is. He says, as I was sitting there, I saw a man coming on a mule. He was sitting on a mule. And they were bringing him. He was coming on his mule. He says, I looked at him. His head was down. He wasn't looking this way. He wasn't looking that way. His head was down like this. And he said, I noticed, this man from Isfahan, I noticed that as the mule was moving forward, the people were parting away from him, letting him come through. He says, as he came forward, he came right next to me. And when he came next to me, the mule stopped. And the man, Ali ibn Muhammad, he turned and he looked at me like this. He says, when I looked at him, he said to me, go home, all of your needs will be fulfilled. Ya Allah. He says, go home, all of your needs will be fulfilled. He says, after that, he went back to kicking on the ground. They took him away. Later, I found that they had thrown him into the prison. They had poisoned him. And I learned who Ali ibn Muhammad is. So the man, he says, so then what happened? He says, after I returned home, I cannot tell you. He says, my wife had child after child after child after child. He says, my business expanded. He says, not only do I have this business, but I can show you several other properties that I now own. All of it. He says, but most of all, I can tell you that after I looked at him and he spoke to me, I felt nothing but love for him. This is the power of Imamah. Yes? And you'll say, well, what a strange story to end with. Well, I'm hoping that it gives you some inspiration, some love for Al-Imam al-Hadi. You have already infinite love for Al-Imam al-Hadi. But to point you to the fact that if you want to learn religion, you want to know the path, this is the door. That's the door. And it needs only for us to learn from it. They were the most moderate, the most balanced, the most perfect in their behavior. They were not extreme. In the life of Imam al-Hadi, there were many revolts against the Abbasis. Did the Imam participate? No. No. He stayed in the middle. He didn't go extreme. Imam Ali became extreme? No, he didn't go this way, he didn't go that way. These people, the Khawarij, they were claiming to implement the Quran properly, right? You don't think that Imam Ali is trying to properly implement the Quran? Of course he is. No one knows Quran better than Imam Ali alayhi salam after Rasulullah. Yes? That's why when we come to the Ahl al-Bayt, it is with this understanding that I don't want to go here and I don't want to go there. I want to be on this middle path with this Ahl al-Bayt. They will teach us how to be, where to be, how to react, how to understand the world. It will create a worldview for us. And you need only to study their lives, and that will open the door for you. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك ونقسم عليك بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها لعن الله ظالميها. اللهم شافي كل مريض، اللهم رد كل غريب، اللهم فك كل أسير، اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك يا كريم. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك وجنبنا معاصيك وثبت أقدامنا على صراطك المستقيم وخذ بأيدينا إليك يا أرحم الراحمين وفرج عنا يا الله فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر وهو أقرب من ذلك وافرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Muhammad.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم السلام علیکم یا عبداللہ السلام علیکم یا منصور اللہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا عامل الغرباء السلام علیکم یا عامل الضعفاء الفقراء السلام علیکم یا عبد الشهید والطوائف والنساء السلام علیکم یا عزیز النفوس السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا اصحاب رسول الزمان السلام علیکم یا خلیفۃ الرحمن السلام علیکم یا امام مسیح جان السلام علیکم یا مدد الایمان السلام علیکم یا شیخ القرآن السلام علیکم یا امام الزمانہ هذا الرضا والفضل وصلی اللہ علیہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم اللہم کل ولیک وجد الناس صلوات اللہ علیہ وعلی آلہ في هذه الساعة كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا معنا حتى تسمعوا وتقرأوا وتهجروا فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على